How the U.S. military spends 800 beater per year on war machines. It's no surprise that America, with all that money to spend, has the most expensive war machines on the planet. Take its latest aircraft carrier, which comes in at a cool $13.3 billion. It's taken so long to build that 5 years after its commissioning, the USS Ford is still not fully battle-ready. And what about the $1.7 trillion national debt? In 2021, the United States military budget surpassed the $800 billion mark. This is more than the combined budgets of the next 9 largest militaries. Switchblade loitering munitions were manufactured in California. The price tag for the most cutting-edge military hardware in the United States could go into the trillions of dollars. But before we get ahead of ourselves, let's take a closer look at what those technologies cost. These undersea bombs weighing 40,000 pounds are merely another test that needs to be completed before the United States Navy's largest and most expensive aircraft carrier can be deemed battle-fit. The previous class of carriers didn't enter service until 1975, but the USS Gerald R. Ford kicks off a new generation of aircraft carriers with more firepower despite having a smaller crew. The Ford was supposed to save billions of dollars throughout its 50-year career. However, the Ford cost twice as much as the previous carrier that was built, and it has been beset with unanticipated expenses and delays. The simple process of unclogging the toilets can cost upwards of USD 400,000. We boarded the USS Ford to investigate why the United States' most technologically advanced aircraft carrier is still unable to be put into service nearly 2 decades after the first plans for her construction were drawn up. These sailors are moving ordnance onto a new kind of weapons elevator that enables them to do what would be impossible on any other aircraft carrier. They are bypassing the mess deck area. They are completely independent. You would never even see them move an ordnance throughout the day. As a result, it is more secure with higher survivability, and we can store more on board. Additionally, it is the only way to move munitions from deep within the Ford to rearm planes on its flight deck. It takes less time, and there are 11 elevators on board, with the most recent one not being licensed until December 2021. It is not surprising that America, with all that money to spend, has the most expensive war machines on the planet. Take its latest aircraft carrier, which costs a cool $13.3 billion. It took so long to build that 5 years after its commissioning, the USS Ford is still not fully battle-ready. And what about the $1.7 trillion military budget that the United States will have in 2021? Switchblade loitering weapons were produced in California. Let's look more closely at the true cost of America's most recent military innovations before we estimate their potential trillion-dollar price tag. These 40,000-pound underwater bombs are just one more test before the largest and priciest aircraft carrier in the U.S. Navy is deemed combat-ready. With stronger firepower and a smaller crew than the preceding class, which entered service in 1975, the USS Gerald R. Ford is the first of a new series of carriers. The Ford was intended to save billions over a 50-year lifespan, although it cost twice as much as the previous carrier, and was beset by unforeseen expenditures and delays. It can cost up to $400,000 to simply unclog the toilets. We boarded the USS Ford to learn why America's most technologically advanced aircraft carrier still cannot be deployed nearly 20 years after construction preparations got underway. These sailors are loading ordnance onto a brand new type of weapons elevator that enables them to accomplish tasks that would be impossible on any other aircraft carrier. Bypassing the mess deck area, they are completely independent, and no one would ever even notice them loading or unloading ordnance throughout the day. As a result, the ordnance is more secure and more survivable, and we can store more of it on board. This is the only way to move munitions from deep inside the Ford to rearmament planes. There are 11 elevators on board, the last of which won't be authorized until December 2021. However, advanced carriers transfer weaponry in a riskier manner through the hangars to the flight deck. The USS Ford Cutting Edge is a massive floating experiment and features over 24 key new technologies, including upgraded weaponry elevators. An ex-Navy captain named Talmanville was the initial project manager for this new class of aircraft carriers. When the ship's construction was planned to begin in '04, it was moved to '05, and a modification was made. Pushing that out was delayed a second, third, and fourth time, increasing the cost by those delays alone from $6.4 billion to $10 billion. The Ford is the first of 4 new carriers that are currently in various design and construction stages. The Navy intends to replace the entire fleet of supercarriers with Ford. According to U.S. law, the Navy must operate 11 carriers at all times, but the U.S. is currently down to 10. Of the 22 aircraft carriers in the world, half are American, while China, Italy, and the UK each have just 2. This carrier class could easily last into the 22nd century if we build 10 or 11 or 12. More than 5,000 shipbuilders put in an estimated 49 million hours to build the Ford, which is 7 times more time than was put in to construct the Empire State Building. It was a mistake, according to Admiral Mike Gilday, Chief of Naval Operations, to put more than perhaps 1 or 2 innovations on any complicated platform at once. Admiral Gilday is correct that you should only implement 1 or 2 new technologies on a new ship, and this is the reason why ships are the only form of weapon that is now in use. The prototype, the first ship in its class, was christened in 2013, and it is the only weapon in use. To meet the demands of that year's budget, the Navy took delivery of the ship in 2017, despite certain issues. The Navy was still conducting final tests 4 years later in preparation for the Ford's initial full deployment. Placing this many new technologies on one ship was a mistake from a program management perspective because it did cause the program to be delayed, and delays, tests, and fixes are so expensive that every new piece of technology is over budget. Go-see pilots can take off and land, but the problems are still being ironed out before it's ready to go to war. The aircraft takeoff and landing systems are 2 technologies that distinguish the Fort from other carriers. In terms of the electromagnetic airplane launch mechanism, some of those are extremely significant advancements that I would call revolutionary rather than incremental. Other carriers launch their jets off the deck using steam-driven catapults, whereas Ford does so using electromagnetic linear induction. Research and development for the electromagnetic aircraft launch system cost over $1 billion, and installing it on the USS Ford cost more than twice as much as it should have. The steam catapult system had thousands of moving parts, whereas the electromagnetic catapult system has less than 100 moving parts. Improvement. The reduced crew and modern technologies were expected to save $4 billion over its 50-year lifespan compared to the previous class of aircraft carriers, since there are fewer moving components and fewer sailors are needed to operate and maintain the smaller crew. The new technique puts less strain on the aircraft, extending their lifespan and allowing for the use of more types of aircraft, even some that are still in the design phase. Since a computer does the work, landing and taking off are also simpler for pilots. The pilot hands control of the aircraft over to the computer, which then smoothly brings the aircraft to a stop when it reaches the advanced arresting gear. This results in a significantly different flying experience for the pilot, one that is much safer and will also extend the lifespan of the aircraft. Due to Ford's computerized systems, heavier and lighter aircraft can take off and land, which was not possible with prior carriers. Because of Ford's blend of innovative technologies, more types of aircraft can land there. Our objective here on board is smoother aircraft arrests for future naval aviation aircraft operating F-35s and drones. The F-35 stealth fighter will require a retrofit on the Ford because, strangely enough, the new launch mechanism can't handle the newest fighter plane. The next Ford-class carrier is now being built in the shipyard, but it has already been converted for the F-35 at an additional cost of $315 million. The Department of Defense made the aircraft carrier program far more expensive than it needed to be, and you can take that to the bank. To date, the true cost of building this warhorse is $13.3 billion, a number that has increased nearly every year since construction began. Even the most basic of onboard functions can take months or years to complete. He started designing and testing the takeoff systems on land in 2011, while the Ford was still being built. Advanced weapons elevators are also now being tested before installation, but that program will only benefit the next Ford-class carrier built as a deterrent. The Ford is likely to be most valuable in the wars it helps prevent rather than those it wages. Yes, the F-35 Lightning II, a new stealth warplane, is expected to cost the U.S. military $1.7 trillion when it makes its first flight in 2022. Do you like it? Kindly give your valuable response in the comment section below. And don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel for more interesting and informative videos.